Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fast-moving, incredibly high-stakes geopolitical showdown between the US and Iran. Since things on the ground are shifting by the minute, we're relying purely on the latest broadcast reporting to figure out exactly what's going down, who's saying what, and how network analysts think we should handle it. We've got a ton of ground to cover, from kinetic airstrikes to global economics, so let's just get right to it.
To make sense of all this, we're going to navigate through 5 key areas: the military escalation, rhetoric from the top, the Strait of Hormuz, the economic battleground, and finally, the pundits' proposed strategy. Section 1. The military escalation, specifically the airstrikes in Iran. We really have to start with the visceral, high-stakes action happening on the ground. Right now, we're seeing a severe military escalation from both sides. The U.S. just launched a second consecutive night of pretty aggressive strikes, targeting coastal and southern military infrastructure in Iran. But, Tehran absolutely isn't backing down. They're firing back with a wave of attacks aimed specifically at U.S. allies in neighboring Kuwait, Bahrain, and Qatar. It's a rapid tit-for-tat escalation.
And compounding all this chaos on the ground is a massive diplomatic collapse. The U.S. president literally just confirmed that last month's fragile ceasefire is completely dead. It's officially over. He essentially brushed it off as just a temporary band-aid to settle oil prices, a band-aid that is now definitively ripped off.
Moving on to Section 2, rhetoric from the top, focusing on the fiery threats. Because this diplomatic breakdown on paper, it is being aggressively mirrored by the leaders themselves.
Touching down at Joint Base Andrews in the early hours of the morning, the U.S. president really didn't mince words about the personal danger he's facing. He flat-out stated he is #1 on the kill list for Iran. But then he made this genuinely bizarre comparison. He claimed the presidency carries a 5.2% danger rate, which he pointed out makes it about 50 times more dangerous than being a professional race car driver. It's definitely a surreal way to highlight a very real, lingering national security threat.
And right on cue, immediately countering him, is this chilling warning from the Iranian Speaker of Parliament. He said, and I quote, "If you strike, you'll get hit. Don't flail around pointlessly or you will sink even deeper." This makes it abundantly clear that Iran fully intends to return fire. They view U.S. actions as just pointless flailing. So yeah, there is zero diplomatic softening happening here. It is direct reciprocal hostility.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Strait of Hormuz and Iran's ultimate leverage. Why does this specific, localized conflict matter so much to the rest of the world? Well, it all comes down to this single waterway.
Network commentators are framing this waterway in incredibly stark terms. They're literally calling it Iran's new nuclear weapon. Think about that comparison for a second. It's their primary source of revenue, sure, but more importantly, it's a critical choke point. If things get turbulent, they can shut it down to paralyze the movement of crucial oil supplies to their adversaries.
And Iran's leadership? They've explicitly weaponized this geographic advantage. They've stated point blank that the strait will only open with Iranian arrangements, not American threats. For Tehran, controlling this massive global economic artery is their ultimate leverage. They seem willing to use it, even if it means sacrificing their own legitimate oil revenue or kissing the lifting of international sanctions goodbye.
Let's shift to Section 4, the economic battleground and financial warfare. Because at its core, this military standoff over the strait is fundamentally an economic battle.
The pundits on the broadcast inject a massive sense of urgency into this standoff by highlighting a critical ticking clock: 60 days. Iran is currently in the process of beginning to unfreeze significant funds, and it's happening within this exact 60-day window. So the U.S. and its allies feel like they have a super narrow window to act before the Iranian regime gets this massive injection of capital to further fund their operations.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, looking at who actually needs this economic lifeline. The international community desperately needs the strait open for oil. That means they're under immense pressure to step up, both publicly and militarily, to back U.S. actions. But the United States, they don't inherently need that oil for themselves from a global market perspective. However, they absolutely have to act just to stop Iran from weaponizing the strait for political leverage.
Finally, Section 5, the pundits' proposed strategy to strangle the regime. To address this ticking clock, commentators are outlining some highly aggressive policy maneuvers.
The first phase of their proposed solution is entirely physical and military. Step 1, physically take back and hold the Strait of Hormuz to prove to the world that the U.S. can control oil prices. Step 2, establish strict defensive lines to push back and knock down those Iranian drone threats. And Step 3, by securing the area, restore enough confidence so commercial merchant vessels can safely pass through again, and crucially, so maritime insurers will actually agree to cover them.
But hey, the strategy doesn't stop at military action. They're pushing for a complete overhaul of diplomacy too. The hosts outline 4 drastic changes. First, immediately stop giving Iran access to any unfrozen funds, period. Second, scrap the current U.S. negotiating team entirely and bring in heavy hitters like the Vice President and Steve Witkoff. Third, demand completely different Iranian representatives. They dismiss the current foreign minister and speaker as a total waste of time. And lastly, drop the pretense and deal directly with the IRGC because, as they put it, the IRGC are the ones actually calling the shots.
And the final piece of the puzzle relies on regional allies. The proposed strategy involves fiercely pressuring Gulf states to seize and freeze Iranian bank accounts stashed across Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. The U.S. Treasury Secretary is reportedly already working to essentially weaponize this regional banking system for maximum economic pressure.
When you look at all these aggressive economic, diplomatic, and military proposals laid out by the network, it paints a picture of a conflict that has moved way, way beyond simple negotiations. It really leaves us pondering a heavy question. Is establishing direct, physical military control over vital economic choke points really the only viable path forward to ensure global energy security and stability? It is a massive question, and how the U.S. and its allies answer it in the coming days is going to shape the future of the entire region. Thanks so much for learning with us today, and we'll see you on the next Explainer.